Good morning. I want to take a moment to welcome you all to our webinar this morning. We're going to give people a moment to just kind of filter in and land through the door. My name is Adam Dewar. I'm with Invest Ottawa, which is the lead economic development agency for the city of Ottawa, and we are involved in working with entrepreneurs and innovators and attracting companies to the broader Eastern Ontario region in Canada's largest province. I see that the number of people is just coming up through the door right now, so we'll give it a second to let them in, and then I'll quickly introduce our panel and the order of affairs for the day. Okay, so we're going to proceed and get going here. So we're the lead economic development agency for the city of Ottawa. We're here with our partners today from CRESA, who's one of our partners who helps to fund and work to broaden the economic development and footprint of the Ottawa region. Our friends from Ontario and the Ontario office in New York have helped us to invite folks this morning, as have the team from the Canadian Consulate General in New York on the federal side, so federal, provincial, and city working together this morning. As well, we have with us David Humphrey from IRCC, who will be taking us through some of the immigration programs. Nadia Allibhai, who's associate partner with EY Law, focused in immigration here in the Ottawa region. Darrell Wellington, the senior vice president of engineering at Centronic Canada R&D. Rich Napoli, the CEO of Object Frontier Services, and they're going to tell you their story today and this morning about their journey with the Canadian immigration system and some of the great programs that we've got here in the region. And we as a region in Ottawa, we're one of Canada's largest technology clusters, a major focus in telecommunications, R&D, software research and development, as well as life sciences and the cybersecurity space. So to leave that at that point, I'm going to now introduce Khawar Nasim, our Acting Consul General of the Consulate General of Canada in New York. Mr. Nasim serves as the Acting Consul General of Canada in New York. Prior to his assignment, he was Canada's Consul General in Minneapolis. Mr. Nasim is a career diplomat who joined the Canadian Department of External Affairs in 1993. His overseas career has included postings in Rome, Barcelona, and Rome for a second time, where he was Minister, Counselor, Commercial and Economic. In 2010, Mr. Nasim took leave from the government to work as Vice President External Affairs for one of Canada's largest gold companies, Yamana Gold of Toronto. In 2014, he returned to the diplomatic service in The Hague from 2014 to 2016. Mr. Nasim was named Canada's Consul General in Minneapolis in July 2016 and Deputy Consul General in New York, November 2017. Mr. Nasim has a bachelor's degree of commerce from Carleton University, which I will point out is in Ottawa, and where myself and a number of my colleagues have studied, and a master's degree in business administration from McGill University. He's married to Lisan Nasim, and they have two children, Nico and Olivia. So, Mr. Nasim, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Wow. Well, note to self: I must reduce the length of my bio. It's so humbling and boring when you hear it, time after time, because we're doing so many of these events electronically that I hear it far too often. Proud to be a Raven. I married a Gigi, so I'm keeping it all in the Ottawa family. It's familiar turf to be back in Ottawa, and thank you for that introduction. Delighted to be here with you this morning. I'm actually delighted that I'm actually on the screen with you, because it's always such a challenge for technically challenged people like myself to get this stuff to work. Let me start by saying, last year, the Consulate General in New York celebrated its 100th anniversary in New York. We opened with what was called a communications service in Times Square in 1919. So we've been in New York for a long while, and we'll be in New York for a long time to come. We have about 100 people who work at the Consulate General. We do everything from visas to passports to culture to immigration but to business links in particular. And we have a large and sophisticated investment team that works with organizations like Invest Ottawa, where one of our former colleagues is now vice president at Invest Ottawa. So we know the terrain very well. It's a very important feature. And one of the key features of our investment program is our immigration program. Those two are now, there's so much intersectionality between that, and it's really an honor for me to speak on this issue. You know, I'd like to thank, of course, our partners, Invest Ottawa and CRESA, for putting this together. You'll be hearing from people a lot more knowledgeable and a lot more informed than I, including my colleague David Humphrey on our immigration programs. But I thought I would ask a little bit of time at the beginning just to give you a few big picture thoughts about Canada's immigration program that I hope will resonate. The first point I think that is that Canada's commitment to diversity is one that's deeply personal to me. I am the proud son of immigrants who came to Canada to build a life many years ago. My father was Homer Simpson-esque. He came to work at the Atomic Energy Commission of Canada in Chalk River, Ontario. I was born in Deep River, Ontario, and don't blink because you'll miss it on the Highway 17 out of town, but it's where I call home. I won't say exactly when we landed, but let's say that it coincided with the Beatles and with much less fanfare. From that time, you know, I've gone on to have the enormous privilege of representing Canada to foreign governments and countries around the world. I consider myself an example of Canada's commitment to inclusion and diversity. There are few places in the world where there are few other places in the world where a story of mine is not only possible, but largely commonplace. Today, fully 40% of Canadians are either first generation or second generation immigrants. Canada proudly welcomes immigrants who arrive from every corner of the world to contribute to our collective success. It was 49 years ago today that Pierre Trudeau introduced his vision for a multicultural society, and it's a celebration of that you look around now and you see what has emerged from that vision. You know, there was a social media tweet, because I get all my information on social media. There was a tweet yesterday that said that Canada ranked #1 in terms of welcoming immigrants. That's a telling story right there. You know, it's at the core of who we are as Canada, and it impacts the way we look at the world. As I look at the panel around me, I see people from all different walks of life, different origins, different ethnicities, and it changes the way that you look at things, because as Canadians of recent immigrant patterns, we have a global outlook. We rely on the global community. We look outward for our inspiration. We bring people in. That's the mentality that we bring and share in Canada. The second point that I want to say is that immigration is at the core of how we see ourselves, but it's not a partisan issue. It is something that spreads across all party lines. So that commitment to immigration may modify slightly, but it remains central to all political stripes, and it will continue. This was, you know, if you go back in the history, and I'm a history wonk, you go back to people like John Diefenbaker. He said, of course, immigration is critical to our pattern. We continue to aspire. The question is just how big and how much, but we remain committed to it. The second point I want to make is that there's an enormous opportunity for companies like yours to be present in Canada. Canada has been identified by the OECD as one of the most attractive countries in the world for entrepreneurs and a destination for highly skilled labor. We offer a low-cost environment, incredible quality of life, a dynamic innovation economy, and we're attracting bright, talented people who are really the future of our nation. When, as a government officer, as a government bureaucrat, I'll use the term, I see no role more important than the one that we do in immigration, because we're attracting talent, which creates that's what government does. We don't build the technology. We attract the technology to allow companies to succeed. So, you know, just a few of the statistics. In 2019, Toronto added more tech jobs than San Francisco Bay Area and New York. Today, 11% of the Ottawa workforce is in tech. That makes Ottawa the #1 for concentration of tech talent in North America, with the #2 being the Bay Area and Toronto. That's why I can't afford a house in Ottawa anymore, because all these tech workers are driving up prices. You know, I just want to tell you that every day I live and work in New York City, and my job is as a diplomat, and I represent interests and I walk a very narrow line. But I should tell you that it should come as no surprise to you when I tell you that there is a contrast between Canada's approach to immigration policies and the United States. Getting a visa for a skilled labor or a skilled visa labor in the United States is tough, and it's getting tougher. Just yesterday, they increased the sort of the eye of the needle, the just how tight it is for those folks. And these rules are making it challenging for that talent class to get in. And Canada, which sits on the perch with the United States, and 70% of our population is within 100 kilometers of the border, we offer a clear path with free flow of goods and people and access. It makes sense that people look at Canada. And our government has developed programs that you'll be hearing about today that bring the brightest and best people to the country. One of those programs is the Global Skills Strategy, which I know David is going to talk about. But I just want to underline that in the first 2 years of that program, 40,000 individuals benefited from that program. A 14-day application to get a visa. That's phenomenal. It's just something that I'm so proud of. And so I urge all of you to look into that, but don't take my word for it. I've got people on the panel today. We've got some people here from Syntronic and Object Frontier who can talk to you about their own experiences in coming in Canada. So look, I've taken a lot of your time. I've got to go eat some birthday cake. I want to convey the message that we would love to see you and your company set up in Canada. If there's anything that we can do at the consulate, whether it's through David or my investment team with Nigel and Mark and Aaron and Matt, if there's anything that we can do to help you out, please don't hesitate to reach out. You're in good hands with the folks in Ottawa and Ontario. I look forward to hearing about the successes that came out of this session, and I wish you a wonderful conversation today. Thank you. Over to you. Back to you, Adam.
Thank you. Yes, and we'll turn it over to Martin now for the next one. Thank you very much, and happy birthday again.
Yeah, happy birthday, Khawar. I assume everyone can hear me. Give me the thumbs. We're good? All right, thank you. So my name is Martin Ose, and I'm a principal, a Canadian principal with CRESA. CRESA is, in case you don't know, for those in the larger audience, we're the largest real estate company that only represents tenants and corporate users of real estate. So we're a little different than traditional real estate companies in that we simply don't work for the landlord. We've got locations all across Canada and the US, which kind of explains why we were interested in pushing to get this seminar happening. And the reason really that we're attached is because if you do decide to dig in deeper with various Canadian different markets you might look at, we're here to offer our support and our help in a very unbiased way. So, essentially when this all started in late June, when I think the first ratchet was tightened on the H1B program, we reached out to Invest Ottawa and a number of trade commissioners with the federal government to see if they'd be interested in participating in a bit of an effort to get the message out to people like you, with companies like yours. So, and so here we are. And I have very little to talk about with real estate, but I did want to say thank you for joining in, because this is, we think this is going to be very helpful, and it doesn't work if there aren't people listening. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Martin. And now we're going to turn it over to David Humphrey, who's going to take you through a high-level overview of the programming, and then we'll jump to our panel.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Humphrey. I'm a migration officer here at the Consulate General of Canada in New York. Just a little about myself. I am a Canadian. I grew up in Southern Ontario in Kitchener-Waterloo. I'm a graduate of the University of Guelph, so Carleton, fair enough. I'd like to talk about Canada's immigration policies, and I'll start by talking about what Khawar mentioned, the Global Skills Strategy. This strategy was developed because Canada recognized that employers in Canada are competing with employers around the world for key valuable talent. The Global Skills Strategy, or GSS, was created to facilitate the hiring of that talent into operations in Canada. And there are four main pillars to the Global Skills Strategy. The The first pillar is the 2-week processing standard, also that Khawar mentioned. This provides highly skilled workers with a work permit in as little as 2 weeks. In fact, it's actually 10 business days. I'm here to tell you that in a perfect world, and by that I mean prior to COVID, my colleagues responsible for delivering this service standard, we're hitting that mark in the vast majority of time. I also need to say that that 2-week clock starts when my department receives a complete application. So it doesn't include the time required upfront to gather documentation, possibly undergo a medical examination if required, nor does it include the time afterwards if somebody has to get a visa counterfoil in their passport. The second pillar of the global skills strategy is something that facilitates working in Canada without a work permit. It's intended for researchers and academics, people who are going to an academic institution. It allows a person to work for 15 days in a 6-month period or 30 days in a 1-year period without first obtaining a work permit. I will say that this program during COVID and border restrictions is under a little bit of pressure right now. But in the long run, this program is not intended for a regular transfer of a long-term employee. The third pillar of the global skills strategy is something that I find very exciting. It's called the dedicated service channel. The dedicated service channel provides a person called an account manager to companies that are referred. This account manager is someone like me, an immigration officer, who works one-on-one with companies to determine what their labor mobility needs are and if there are solutions, and to find solutions within Canada's immigration program. This account manager cannot provide exemptions from a requirement, nor can they make decisions on applications made. However, they can advocate on behalf of a company by contacting a processing office to inquire what's happening with a work permit application if the processing times are missed. What's very exciting about this account manager is that it's very cost effective in the fact it's free. There is a referral that is required. My trade commissioner colleagues from Global Affairs Canada are referral partners, as conveniently are some organizations such as Invest Ottawa. The fourth pillar of the Global Skills Strategy is administered by a sister department, Employment and Social Development Canada. This program is called the Global Talent Stream and provides 2 options for companies in Canada, for employers in Canada, to hire very specific and unique talent. The first option is for those people who are extremely rare, who have high-level talent, high-level skills, and that a person wants to hire in Canada. The other option, option B, is something I also think is very exciting. It developed a list of occupations in Canada that have been determined to be in low supply. There's not enough domestic supply of these occupations, and they are generally in the IT sphere: computer program developers, software developers, hardware developers. This program, this pillar, allows for a labor market impact assessment, a Canadian labor market impact assessment, to be delivered in as little as 2 weeks. This step is very similar to the US Department of Labor certification step before the H1B is actually issued. Once that document is in hand, the Canadian Labor Market Impact Assessment, then the first pillar of the Global Skills Strategy kicks in, and that person would be eligible to receive a work permit in as little as 2 weeks. So here's an example. If you were to interview someone tomorrow that you found had a particular set of skills that qualified for option B in the Global Talent Stream, you could receive their Labor Market Impact Assessment in as little as 2 weeks. This is all in a perfect world. After they receive that, they can then apply for the work permit, receive that in as little as 2 weeks. So you meet someone tomorrow who just graduated school or has a wealth of experience that you want to hire that person into operations in Canada. Theoretically, they could be working in Canada for you in as little as a month. So Canada's programs don't just facilitate the hiring of people into operations in Canada, they also facilitate the retention of that talent in Canada. One of the best programs is, of course, Express Entry. It's an umbrella program built to administer permanent resident programs. One of those programs is called the Canadian Experience Class. Through this program, any person who has achieved 1 year of skilled work in Canada can apply through Express Entry for permanent residence. Canada has committed to finalizing permanent resident applications received through Express Entry in 6 months or less. So, returning to that example of that person that you met tomorrow, who you wanted to hire, They have worked for about a month to go through the labor market step and the work permit step. They gain a year's worth of work experience for you in Canada. You support their permanent resident application. In many cases, a company can support the application by simply providing a letter that says they will confirm at least one more year of work for that person in Canada. 6 months later, they become a permanent resident. So we're about 17, 18 months from hiring to that person working for you in Canada as a permanent resident of Canada. Once they are a permanent resident of Canada, they of course can become eligible to apply for Canadian citizenship after meeting the citizenship requirements, which include 3 years of residence in Canada within the 5 years preceding the application, and then they are a Canadian citizen. So these programs not only facilitate the hiring, but also the retention. But there are other strategic benefits that we believe employers can find in Canada's migration programs. For example, spouses and common law partners are eligible for open work permits when they come with that principal worker. Canada recognizes the value of seeing families reunited in Canada and thinks there's no reason not to allow spouses and common law partners to contribute to society through work. There are multiple intra-company transfer mechanisms that allow a company to transfer an existing employee into Canada. So that would skip that labor market step. And again, many of those employees would probably qualify for that 2-week processing. There are other strategic benefits in the sense that Canada has signed many trade agreements with Peru, Colombia, with the European Union, with the Pacific Rim countries through the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So going back to that example, that person who you met tomorrow, a month later they get their work permit through the global and the impact assessment. About 18 months later, they are a permanent resident of Canada. A few years later, they become a Canadian citizen. It's quite possible that that person then could, say, move to Vietnam, which is a member of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and open up your Vietnam branch of the company because of the labor mobility provisions found in Canada's free trade agreements. So we think that these programs are very good examples of what Khawar was saying, how building a diverse workforce in Canada is benefit not only to Canada, but to the companies that and the employers in Canada. And I thank you very much for taking the time to learn about the programs today, and all the best.
Thank you, David. And so, we're going to move on to the next phase, which is of course the panel. I mean, everybody knows that myself and David and Khawar, we're always going to say great things about all of these programs because, they're wonderful, wonderful tools. And as David alluded to, there's the perfect world, and then there's the imperfect world. And that's one of the reasons why we've put together a panel of companies and organizations who've actually used, these programs. So, Rich Napoli, the CEO of Object Frontier, their company is using it. Darrell Wellington, the Senior Vice President of Engineering at Centronic R&D Canada, their company is using these programs and streams. And Nadia Allibhai, who is an immigration attorney in the Ottawa region with EY Law, who is an associate partner there and is going to lead the next phase of this discussion. And I will say that since there's a question that's popped up on the startup visa, we are also a designated entity for that. We have seen lots of those sorts of things. We hear those stories of people charging lots of money too. For the right client, we don't really charge money. That's not in our interest to do so, and not really in the spirit of the program. We will rent them a desk at $200 or $250 a month. But, on our side of things as a designated entity, if they're technology fit for Ottawa, then, we're certainly interested in talking to them. And there's not going to be, a $200,000 fee. But I would recommend connecting with an immigration lawyer. Anyway, Nadia, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Adam, and good morning, everyone. So as Adam mentioned, I am an associate partner with EY Law, and I am a Canadian immigration lawyer, and I focus primarily in the Ottawa region, and really partner with Invest Ottawa and a lot of companies that we're going to hear from really momentarily on supporting their talent agenda and leveraging some of Canada's great immigration programs to really mobilize talent to scale up and expand operations in Canada and things like that. It is my distinct pleasure to moderate this. As Adam mentioned, we have Darrell Wellington with Centronic and Rich Napoli with Object Frontier. This is really meant to be, we will take questions from the audience, so feel free to type them in the chat and I will pick them up as we go. But maybe I'll just pause and let Rich introduce himself, followed by Darrell, and then we'll get right into the panel.
Sure. Thanks, Nadia. Thanks for having me on here, and good to see all of you. My name is Rich Napoli. I'm the CEO of Object Frontier. We are a 1,200-person software engineering company. We help large companies build their digital products and drive their revenues with, commercial-grade software. And we, just briefly, we'll get into it more, but I'm based outside of New York, not too far from you, who are outside Princeton, New Jersey, and back in 2017, we were, recognizing the fact that since a lot of our guys come from India to the US, the visa program was tightening up. We could see that. And so we turned to the consulate there, and they did a great job of introducing us to Canada. And we'll get back to, sort of why Ottawa. You know how much I love Ottawa. But it's been a great program. You guys have been so helpful, and we're delighted to be up there, and we're growing there. So happy to be on the panel and chat more about it.
And Darrell?
Sure, Darrell Wellington. I run the Canadian operations of Centronic. Centronic is a Swedish-based global engineering design house. We help our customers develop their products in the areas of software, electronics, electromechanics. So I'm actually a Canadian. I'm based in Ottawa. I started in 2014, and we've grown the Canadian team to nearly 300 employees in that time. So we've leveraged the different programs as well as the expertise from Nadia and Martin and Adam. So we're good. We can definitely provide a good recommendation for their services. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we'll just maybe dive right in, and I know you guys have both touched on this, so I'm going to pose a question to both of you. Rich, you alluded, you started this journey maybe in 2017. I think you've been in the Ottawa region maybe since 2018. Darrell, Centronic started operations in Canada in 2014. What made you decide Ottawa as the place to start your Canadian operations?
You want me to go first, or how do you want
Go ahead.
Okay. So it's a love story of just, I came, the consulate invited me first to Toronto and then to Ottawa. We wanted to focus on Ontario. I mean, that's 50% of your GDP comes from Ontario. So we were focused on one of those two cities. And for a variety of reasons, for the fact that it was a great, we do business in Canada, and it's also for all these immigration things we're going to talk about. But we went to Toronto, and to listen, Toronto's a great city. I grew up in New York City. Toronto is very much, sort of like the Canadian New York, very similar feel to it. Wonderful, vibrant economy and vibrant society. So sure, it looks great. But when I came to Ottawa, I have to say there was a certain feel that I had for the place, that it just felt like it had all the advantages of a big city, but on a more bite-sized scale. And, especially for my guys, I'd be bringing from India to Canada. Most of them are married with children. I think Ottawa is a little more family-friendly place, a little more cost-effective for my needs as well as theirs. So I just love the diversity of people there. I mean, both from the immigrants, and also, it's right on the border between Quebec and Ontario. So you have the whole Francophone community as well. So it's a very vibrant international community. Somebody, I think Harvey Finkelstein from Shopify says his European friends consider Ottawa America for Europeans, meaning that it's got just enough, it's got some of the, obviously a lot of American, feel to it a bit, but it's got that whole European sensibility as well. And I love the people, I love the friendliness there, I love and the community, the tech community is vibrant there. We now have 5 different customers within the Ottawa community, all large tech companies or tech-enabled companies, and the demand is there for our services. My guys come over from India. As all you said, the immigration program is outstanding. They're over there. Some of them are applying for permanent residency already. So I love Ottawa. As you know, I'm like your unofficial ambassador. I don't think I've introduced myself to anybody in America in the last 3 years without showing them pictures of Ottawa within the first 10 minutes of my conversation. And my kids are sick of me here talking about it. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful city. I'm happy to be associated with it. And it's been good business for us.
Yeah, and for Centronic, so I was kind of the result of that choice, but it's a Swedish-based company. There's a lot of synergy between Sweden and Canada and Ottawa around hockey and way of life and way of working. Way of working, as well as I guess the biggest factors is more, it's more around the pillars of competent employees, tech workers, as well as customers, being close to customers in the same space, and then having more talent actually in the engineering schools is a great source of new recruits.
Perfect. So we heard a lot from David about the various programs, and I personally practiced immigration for about 8 or 9 years, and leading up to the global skills strategy, we always got calls from clients saying, okay, we found this great candidate, they're from this country, and we're like, okay, that's great, it's going to take you 8 months to do this. And then you lose your talent. Or, you know, when you're looking for these really highly specialized, unique talent, you know, this was a common conversation. The global skills strategy and the sister program, the Global Talent Stream, has been really welcome to a lot of organizations that we at EY work with, and we leverage this program a lot. You don't want to hear my experiences. Let's just dive right into hearing Rich and Darrell's perspectives. I'm going to pose a question to both of you. Maybe Darrell, you can start, and then Rich add in. How have the various Canadian immigration programs, including GSS and the Global Talent Stream, really supported your company's growth and talent agenda?
Sure. So for us at Centronic, it's part of our early on. It probably wasn't part of our process. We did tap into the global transfer of employees. So we've brought employees from our other offices around the world, and that's been fairly seamless. Probably when we grew to about 150 employees, we started needing to expand our expertise and even expand kind of our areas that we're focused on. So when we're starting into a new technical area, for example, in automotive, and there's not enough talent locally, we'll tap into the global market, bring in some senior expertise, and then build a team around that. So where we can transition some of our existing employees into the new technical areas that are similar, but there are some specific requirements. So we use the program to expand our existing talent and build teams around that expertise. So over the past 3 years or so, we've probably hired, I'm going to say, at least 40 people through those programs. Over the last year, it's probably about 10, and we've even probably done about 5 during the COVID situation. So it's taking a bit longer, but more like people are nervous to travel rather than the processing or anything.
Yeah. And
Rich,
then,
go ahead.
Yeah. From my end, I mean, first, you just understand our business model. You know, we're a software engineering company. So typically we have folks in North America that sit on site with our clients, helping them understand what needs to be built and working there, but also communicating with our team offshore in India. So we've got, 900,000 guys in India and about 200 guys in North America. And so the model for us is typically we hire young graduates of computer science in India, train them on our dime for a year or two before they're even billable. And then as they grow in skills, we look to bring them to North America to, to be that higher level architect or project manager here in North America. And it's so, as we obviously part of the model is a function of immigrants, right? We constantly have to bring young men and women from India to North America. And we face real constraints with that in the US, as you mentioned, David, as the screws are being tightened on the US immigrations. We needed to have a back, an alternate strategy, a back way. And we started looking at Canada. We were looking at Canada anyway. I've been looking at it for a while just because it's a great country and it's got opportunities for us to do business. But then as the immigration issues became more challenging, we wanted the ability to bring folks to North America because that's the other part of our model. Some of our customers want what we call nearshoring, where they want our access to our resources, but they want them in the same time zone as the East Coast of the United States. So we looked, and that's when I reached out to the consulate, and as I said, I'll save the whole that story. But the program, the Global Skills Strategy program that Invest Ottawa introduced us to, Invest Ottawa did a great job of just explaining everything about what it means to come to Canada, because it's not for a U.S.-based company. It's not just immigration, but it's the legal side, the accounting side, the immigration side, the real estate side. And so I both work with Nadia and Martin and Adam to get all that done. But specifically, the Global Skills Strategy program is exactly what we need to be able to respond quickly to changes in the market. So when we have opportunities, we can bring somebody over quickly, as opposed to in the U.S. Depending on which visa we're going after, it's anywhere between 3 months and 18 months to get somebody here. And that's not even a guarantee. But the Global Skills Strategy has been just a breath of fresh air in terms of its ability to move things through. And David mentioned the account manager or the concierge kind of program there that I know Nadia uses as well with us. And that's just been a great way to accelerate these things to get, we only have a handful of guys in Ottawa so far, I don't know, half a dozen or so. Because again, the model is for every person on site, there might be 10 people offshore working together. But I'd say about 5% of our business now, our revenue comes from Ottawa. So it's been a significant source for us. And the Global Skills Strategy just lets us move guys across very quickly, situate them, get them started up. Invest Ottawa has been helpful just in getting our guys situated, getting them, driver's license, credit cards, all that kind of stuff. And then I think we have our first one. Nadia, you may know better than I do. Actually, I think we have our first guy already applying for his permanent residency. And they love it here. They love Ottawa. They love what's going on. So for us, it's a way to expand into Canada quickly when the demand is there, as opposed to having to be so strategic and forward-thinking as we do in the US. We have to plan 18 months in advance. Here, we can be much more responsive. We have a whole stable of young men and women in India that have already been through the pre-certification process for coming to Canada. And so when the opportunity comes, we can move guys right over. So big fan of the program. I think Khawar was right on when saying Canada's got a great, they understand that, bringing high-tech immigrants into the country is good for the country. It's, it increases your tax payrolls. It grows the diversity of your economy. So we're on board with that. We think it's a great program. We're happy to be part of it.
Perfect. There's a couple questions I'm going to take from the audience. And I think this question is actually really relevant, and I'll put it to both of you, but feel free to chime in. There's always a cost for immigration, right? So it's to bring the person here, and then, are they going to adapt? Are they going to thrive? How do you integrate them in the community? And we heard from Khawar, we heard from David on the multiculturalism and diversity that Canada affords. But, these are really real concerns when a company looks to, immigrate talent. There's a cost. Are they going to like it? Do their families like it? All of that. So it's kind of a two-part question. So one is, how about the cost of talent? So this is probably more related to compensation in Canada versus maybe US or elsewhere. So what is the cost of the talent here, related HR costs compared to other places? And then part two is, as you're bringing in people and integrating them into your organization, what are effective strategies that you're seeing, people really integrate in the community and look at making Canada potentially their permanent home?
All right, David, you want to go first? Or you want to?
Sure, I'll go. So on the cost, our head office is in Sweden. We have other offices. So I'd say the general cost is about equal to Sweden. Probably if you're in Stockholm, it's probably half of the cost in Stockholm. And to compare to low cost regions, we're probably about double the cost, I would say, from pure cost. From my understanding, which is not which is a little bit narrow. What was the second part of the question? Or maybe
yeah, so just integration into the community. So you guys, I think in the last 3 years, you'd mentioned you brought in over 40 people, integrating into your organization and the community.
That's definitely a key focus for us for any new employee, but especially so for people that are coming new to Canada or to Ottawa. So we're hiring people from all over. We pair them up with existing employees to help answer any questions around the areas, to give them advice on neighborhoods, to give them advice on how to do things with exactly the driver's license and buying a car, and even just when you're new to the country, it's hard to get any credit. So there's some challenges there which we help them out with by pairing them up with our existing employees. And part of that is cultural too. So some of the things that in the country that they're coming from are normal in Canada, that we'll try to pair them up with someone that's had a similar kind of transition. And it's not that we want them to conform to Canada, but just to give them the insight of, okay, this is how things are normally done. Yeah.
Yep.
Did you want to add, Rich?
Yeah, just from my perspective, so in terms of cost, what we find in sort of U.S. versus Canada, obviously India is a whole different cost structure, but U.S. versus Canada, what we find is that numerically they're about the same. So $100,000 salary in the U.S. is equivalent job level to $100,000 salary in Canadian dollars in Ottawa. But obviously, they're of course my lawn man coming in right in the middle of this. Hope you can hear me. But but there's a savings there. Obviously, for us, there's about a 25% exchange rate difference. So there's some savings there for us right away, and that's what we can offer to our customers. That nearshoring could still be somewhat cheaper than being on site in the U.S. So there's that. The cost of living certainly in Ottawa, as Khawar said, is rising, but still definitely less than Toronto, less than New York, less than Boston, and other places with Washington, D.C. So for us, it's still got those advantages. In terms of culturally bringing guys across, I'd say two things. One, we do have some resources here already, and as Darrell said, we rely on the existing team to sort of welcome the newcomers and say, this is how you do it, this is how you get your license, this is how you're, and help them find apartments and get set up and buy them, winter coats, because guys coming from India sometimes don't even have those. So we get them all set up. But I'm going to use an example of flipping around. This is why we love Canada. One of our customers makes a sort of unofficial habit of we have several of our employees working there, and there's one woman there in particular just helps to introduce our Indian newcomers to Ottawa. So she has taken them out skating on the Rideau Canal with their children, and taking them to see some of the museums and fine arts. So you know, that to me is a tribute to Ottawa and to Canada, that you're so welcoming and so open that even my customers are helping us, you know, get our newcomers settled. So it's been great. We don't, you know, if you talk to Harley Finkelstein at Shopify, which I did when I first got here, you know, he has a whole program right around, you know, how to welcome newcomers in and greet them at the airport, and it's a formal part of his organization because he's doing it at scale. We're not quite that big yet, but you know, we sort of pattern ourselves informally that same way. You got to make these folks feel welcome, and they do. My team here in Ottawa, they love it. They love the country. I thought they'd be afraid of the cold, and coming from India, they're out on the canal skating. They're, you know, skiing and winter skiing and so on. So they love it there.
Okay. We might be getting right into time for this panel, but I'll put one more question out there. I mean, because I think we'd be remiss not to talk about some of the economic uncertainties and things arising out of COVID. I know both of you guys have seen tremendous growth actually in the COVID period within your organizations. You know, and immigration is really aligned, your immigration strategy is really aligned with your broader talent strategy with, you know, more remote work and things like that. Like, are you going to continue to see, you know, leveraging the various Canadian immigration programs to sustain your growth, or, you know, are you looking at, you know, with remote work and other leveraging other talent pools? Like, where are you kind of sitting on that spectrum of the uncertainties we're currently living in today?
All right. Well, since you went first last time, I'll go first this time. You know, as you said, the uncertainties of COVID have actually and I think Darrell and I are pretty much in the same space. You know, the uncertainties of COVID have benefited us in some ways because it's accelerated every company, every one of our customers' demand for digital transformation. You know, because as their business moves digital and moves online, moves remote, they recognizing that some of their older technologies and so on really can't support that, you know, that fast-paced digital way. And we were always planning on doing things, but now they're doing it faster. So we're seeing an increase in growth. We added 3 new customers this year in Ottawa alone, people that need to move faster. And where that talent is, I mean, in some ways it gives us more flexibility because now since everybody's remote, the need to be on site is temporarily at least not as great. But I'm a firm believer. I mean, our motto is predicated on the fact that over the long term, we need to be, you know, this is software design and development is a fast-paced business. You can do some of it for a period of time as we have, but eventually you need to be on site. You need to be right where things are happening. And I think, Martin, I think as you've talked about as well, we're going to see organizations coming back to offices, being on site. At some, maybe not the same way as we did before, but, you know, we're going to be there. We see that model continuing. So we're going to be continuing to invest in Ottawa, continuing to invest in Canadian resources for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so for us, I think we've seen a similar trend where companies are accelerating their development plans, which create opportunities for us. We have kind of ramped up our hiring over the last 2 months, and really, so we were initially kind of moving away from the immigration strategy, but we're moving back to that now as the I guess the quantity of positions that we're looking to fill here in Ottawa are increasing. For us around working from the office, we've actually been in the office from the beginning. I'll say maybe 10 to 20% of our employees, maybe 30% are working from the office now. We do kind of, we're trying to find ways to get people at least in the office part-time to really allow that innovation, collaboration that they haven't figured out how to reproduce online. Maybe it will be possible, but it's not possible yet.
I think a certain amount has to happen face to face.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I found this. There's a question on the startup visa. A couple questions on startup visa. I know Darrell and Rich, I don't know that either of you guys are leveraging this. And Adam, I'm actually going to pass this one to you just to talk a little bit about Invest Ottawa's as a designated partner in the startup visa program, and if you want to add a few comments on that.
For sure. I mean, we're one of the tripartite members of. We agree with the signed an MOU with Immigration, Citizenship, and Refugees Canada and the Employment Skills Development Canada, two of the major government departments that run the programs that David talked about earlier, so that we can nominate people into that, Category A fast track, which works very well, by the way. If you're trying to bring people in and they're not on the shortage list because they're, I don't know, a senior vice president of sales in seismographic equipment for the Asia Pacific region or something like that. And that's a real example. Those sorts of things do exist. But, to make a long story short, on the startup visa, we are also a designated referral partner and entity, because we do run a full-on incubator and accelerator program. Within that particular program, we seek to focus on our core markets of focus as a region. Most of our foreign investment and foreign investors come from a range of high-tech markets across Europe and the Nordic countries, the Americas, primarily the United States, and Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and to an extent, China. And a little bit from India. So that's really, where we focus. So when we get somebody that comes in to us and says, hi, I'm, interested in the startup visa as a company, we'll look at their organization, we'll look at their business plan, we'll have a discussion with them. We don't charge them for a commitment certificate. If there are people charging for commitment certificates, run, don't walk, because that's not something that you should buy. Nobody can give you a guaranteed outcome. We don't give or offer a guaranteed outcome just because we're nominating you. The cost from an Invest Ottawa standpoint, typically speaking, they have to come through the Global Runway Soft Landing Program. So they will want to rent a desk and use our office space, which is $250 a month. That said, they don't have to use that program. If we're supporting them with a commitment certificate. That's an option. It's one of the many options available. So that's really where we sit as an entity there, and I'll gladly share my LinkedIn and contact information, or Trevor will. David, I don't know, do you have any sort of comment or background on the startup visa program and how it's supposed to or not supposed to work?
Well, I understand the startup visa program to be a permanent resident program. That provides an opportunity for a work permit while that permanent resident application is in process. You've spoken about the sort of the things that happen before an application is received, all the incubator, accelerator, the commitment certificates. The program is used and people are using it. There's a wide variety of startups that are coming through these programs. Some are better than others. And as you say, I will confirm that there is no guaranteed outcome. Once you get a certificate from a partner, when that application is made, that does not mean your application will be approved. The commitment on the startup visa permanent resident processing side is 12 months for those applications, whereas in many cases through express entry on the federal skilled worker program side, the commitment is 6 months. I would encourage, these are great programs. They're possible. The startup visa, the express entry, and there's a lot of pathways that need to be navigated, and people need to choose what's going to work best for them, for timing, for all of these other sorts of things. The services that you've described that are very, I can only imagine how helpful they are for people starting companies in Canada. But if people can, they think that they can do it on their own, there's other ways that they can do. They don't have to go through that program as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, David. Is you don't have to use startup visa, particularly if you're a startup that's further along. What we see is that they'll use other programs and pathways because they operate more quickly. And as with all Canadian immigration programs, even if they're considered temporary in nature, to David's earlier point about Canadian experience, they always offer sort of a pathway or a series of pathways to staying forever. And that's one of the things is, and I think that's a kind of a good point to hang this up on is the Canadian immigration solution is a permanent solution in the sense that, it's reliable, it's predictable. It's as Khawar said earlier on, it's one of those sorts of things where it's not political in the same way that it is in the United States at the moment. You know, it's something that we're committed to kind of across the party lines in Canada and across political lines. It's something that, you know, has kind of made us who we are as a country. So one of the major components of that is a permanent solution. So if you're turning to this solution, yes, you're using a temporary pathway to get the people in quickly, but they're going to have a series of other pathways following that they can take within a relatively short time to stay in Canada, you know, on a permanent basis. Citizenship can be, in many cases, if somebody applies on the first date they're eligible, people are citizens in 4 years. You know, that's a reality. And then they can stay forever. So there's a number of these sorts of things that are really important. In terms of next steps for this panel and this webinar, we would invite you to reach out to us if you have private questions that are company specific, if you need a nomination into the Global Skills Strategy Dedicated Service Channel because you're already hiring in Canada, call us. We'll sign you up. And in any kind of case, if you have questions for any of the panelists, I mean, feel free to reach out to them on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll circulate a follow-up email. But, you know, as a next step, if you want to understand, you know, what's next, you know, you can set up a meeting with ourselves or with our Ontario colleagues or with, you know, our federal colleagues to discuss what your next steps are for opening in Canada. So with that, I'd like to thank Martin for helping us out to promote this, David for his support here today, Darrell Wellington from Centronic for his continued support over and over again. Nadia, it's great as usual, always meeting with our clients and companies to help inform them. Rich, our definite unofficial ambassador and my best salesperson. As well.
The commission checks has been so good, Adam. Yeah, I know.
yeah, exactly. And the team at the Canadian Consulate General in New York for their support. And hopefully I haven't missed or forgotten anybody. Of course, our team at Invest Ottawa on the event side who help us to put these sorts of things on. And they've sent off a survey that you can fill out, a post-event survey. So please go ahead and do that because given that we've had quite a few people attend with us today, we'll probably do more of these sorts of discussions because right now we know this is a major challenge for many fast-growing U.S. companies, and it's one that we're very happy to, you know, help advance. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.